Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really digging into something many of you wrestle with. How do you start something meaningful, but more importantly, how do you make it last and actually grow through smart partnerships? We've been going through this document, Launch, Sustain, and Multiply.pdf, and our mission today is to pull out the absolute key stuff for you.
Exactly. And it's more than just getting started, isn't it? It's about how you intentionally cultivate something that has real legs, a movement even.
Right.
The source material itself poses this great question, something like, what if your first 90 days weren't just a launch, but actually planted seeds for a partnership that outlives you?
Ooh, I like that. That really captures it.
That's the heart of what we're unpacking.
Yeah, precisely. So this deep dive, it's essentially trying to give you a kind of blueprint for building these initiatives that endure and expand.
A roadmap, maybe?
Yeah, a roadmap. It's this journey in 3 parts, right? Launching with real purpose, sustaining it through strong relationships, and then multiplying the impact. The document calls it launching with intentionality, sustaining through relational depth, and multiplying toward legacy.
And it's not just abstract theory. They give this really compelling example. A team that started, 3 prayer support networks?
That's right, 3 networks in just 2 years.
Yeah, which really shows that these principles, when applied, they actually work. They lead to that kind of multiplication.
Okay, so let's dive into that first phase, launch. Laying those foundations with a shared vision. The document really hammers home how vital that strong beginning is. It even uses the Genesis story, Abram's call, as a sort of model for a divine launch that involved partnership right from the start.
And that leads to this interesting concept they call the theology of departure.
Right. Tell us about that.
Well, the idea is that new things often start with, a step of faith, moving away from what's comfortable or familiar, obedience. But the crucial part is, the source argues, God rarely calls us to go it alone. He often intends for us to do it in partnership.
So the partnership isn't an add-on, it's baked in from the beginning.
That seems to be the idea. It's not just what you're called to do, but recognizing who you're meant to do it with. That shared step, that community, is part of the calling.
That makes sense, that initial support structure. And then comes casting the vision. They use Nehemiah looking over the walls of Jerusalem. What's the takeaway there?
Nehemiah is a great example because he didn't just see the problem, the broken walls, the danger. He envisioned the solution, a rebuilt, secure city.
Okay.
So casting the vision means you have to clearly articulate both sides. The challenge, yes, but also the positive future you're working towards. That clarity is what attracts the right partners, people who resonate with that specific picture.
So practically speaking, how do we apply this when we're launching? The document offers some concrete steps.
It does. First off, clarity of purpose. You need to be crystal clear on the what, why, and how.
Like a mission statement.
Sort of, yeah. They call it a mission manifesto. But the key is it's concise. And crucially, it's something you share personally with potential partners, not just something on a website.
That personal connection again. Which leads to the second point, right? Relational outreach.
Exactly. Prioritizing those face-to-face, or at least one-on-one conversations. Coffee, a prayer walk, sharing a meal. Those build much stronger foundations for partnership than, say, a mass email campaign.
It feels more authentic, builds trust faster.
Absolutely. And the third piece is anchor in Scripture, grounding the whole thing in a clear biblical mandate.
Like Mark 16.15 or John 15.16.
Yeah, things like preach the gospel or go and bear fruit. Having that scriptural anchor gives it weight and connects with others who share that foundation.
Okay, now this is where it gets even deeper. The source then revisits these launch ideas, starting with the power of a shared beginning, making that point again. God's call usually isn't meant for solo work. It uses the tabernacle artisans and the early church as examples.
Yeah, Bezalel and Aholiab, the tabernacle guys, they have different skills, right? But they work together. The complementarity is key.
One couldn't do it alone.
Exactly. And the early church, Acts 2 and 4, that sense of community, sharing everything that shows the strength you get when you launch together.
And it brings up Abram again with this theology of departure, obedience in community, highlighting that he didn't just pack his bags and leave.
No, he took Sarah, Lot, his whole household. It emphasizes that obedience is often a communal act. You need that mutual encouragement, especially when stepping into the unknown. Your team, your family, they're part of that journey.
Then there's this powerful image. Embracing our identity, living stones in God's edifice from First Peter. What does that tell us about partnerships?
That living stones idea brings out two key truths, doesn't it? First, each individual stone, each partner has unique value and gifts.
Right.
But second, we're interdependent. A single stone doesn't make a building. We need each other. We fit together to create something strong and beautiful.
The story they share about Maria, the church planter.
Yeah, that illustrates it perfectly. She knew her strength was preaching, but she recognized her need for partners with administrative gifts, fundraising skills, that interdependence in action.
It's about knowing your strengths and your gaps.
Precisely. Then, building on vision casting, it talks about casting a compelling vision, from brokenness to possibility, using Nehemiah again. What makes a vision truly compelling?
3 things, according to the source. First, descriptive clarity. Use concrete language, paint a picture people can actually see.
Not just vague ideals.
Exactly. Second, emotional resonance. Share stories that touch hearts, connect with people's compassion and conviction.
Make it personal.
Yes. And third, again, scriptural anchoring, rooting it firmly in God's purposes.
That gives it authority and longevity.
Okay, last piece of the launch phase. Covenant initiation, sealing our shared journey. It mentions Abraham and Abimelech, Elijah and the widow. Examples of agreements. What's the modern application?
It's about making the implicit explicit. Having a dedicated time, maybe a retreat or workshop, where the founding partners actually articulate and agree on shared values, roles, responsibilities, maybe even communication rhythms.
And writing it down.
Yes, writing it down. Not as a rigid legal contract, maybe, but as a living covenant, a reference point that reminds everyone what they committed to together. It formalizes the shared understanding.
Okay, solid foundation laid, vision cast, covenant made. Now, phase 2, sustain, keeping it going. The document warns that launch visions can just fizzle out if they aren't actively nurtured.
Yeah, like the Israelites needing that daily manna in the wilderness, or Paul constantly writing letters to encourage and guide the churches he planted. Sustaining takes ongoing effort.
So what kind of effort? It talks about spiritual rhythms.
This is crucial.
Yeah.
Building in regular practices like shared prayer, times of rest, maybe periods of reflection and renewal. These aren't optional extras. They're presented as essential fuel for the partnership's engine. It keeps everyone connected to God and the core purpose.
It prevents burnout and keeps the why front and center. Then there's mutual accountability. Barnabas comes up again here.
Barnabas, the son of encouragement, his example highlights the need for partners to actively support and, yes, gently hold each other accountable.
Speaking truth in love.
Exactly. It's about encouragement, affirmation, but also being willing to have honest conversations when things aren't working or someone's struggling. That builds deep trust.
So, what are some practical ways to do this? The document calls them practical touchstones for sustained partnership.
It suggests things like regular check-ins, maybe monthly video calls or focused emails, perhaps providing shared resources like quarterly devotional guides focused on the mission.
Keeps people connected.
Yeah, and celebrating milestones is important too. Sending out a quick memo when a goal is hit, or having an annual gathering to mark progress. It acknowledges the journey.
And adaptive learning loops. What's that?
Basically building in feedback. After a project or event, taking time to ask what worked, what didn't, how can we improve? It keeps the partnership dynamic and prevents stagnation.
Constantly learning and adjusting. Makes sense. The source then uses this metaphor. Spiritual rhythms as structural supports, like buttresses on a cathedral.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? Just like those buttresses provide external support to hold up massive walls, these shared spiritual practices provide the underlying strength for the partnership.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Maybe it's a team of church planters sharing prayer requests daily via text, or a mission team agreeing on a no meetings Friday evening to protect rest, or even annual founders retreats to reconnect with the original vision and each other.
So intentional practices that reinforce reliance on God and community.
Exactly. And it circles back to mutual accountability and encouragement, emphasizing that speaking truth in love again. But it also introduces the economics of trust. What's that about? That's about transparency and shared responsibility regarding resources. Things like collaborative budgeting, clear fundraising goals, and regular open financial reporting, maybe those quarterly partnership briefs they mentioned.
So everyone knows where the money is coming from and where it's going.
Pretty much. That kind of openness builds huge confidence and trust. It shows you're truly in it together.
Got it. And the last point in sustain is opening the windows, multiplying influence in generations. That sounds like it's pointing towards the next phase.
It really is. When a partnership is healthy and sustained, it naturally starts looking outward. How can this impact be broadened? How can we prepare the next generation to carry this forward? It's the bridge to multiplication.
Okay, phase 3, multiply, spreading the impact. The document notes that in the Bible, partnerships often lead to new ministry centers, new leaders being raised up. Moses and Joshua.
Elijah and Elisha, Paul and Timothy, classic examples of this multiplication principle.
So a core concept here is reproducible models. What does that mean practically?
It means designing your core ministry activities and processes in a way that's relatively simple and clear so that others can easily learn, adopt, and adapt them in their own settings. Think about Jesus' command to make disciples. It was a process others could replicate.
So not overly complex or personality dependent.
Ideally, yes, it needs to be transferable. Then there's commission and release. This sounds important, very. It's about intentionally identifying, equipping, and then formally sending out new leaders or teams to start new things. It's a public affirmation and blessing, sending them off with prayer and necessary resources, trusting God for the growth.
It's an act of faith, releasing control.
Definitely. And that ties into the mentor-mentee legacy again. Moses, Joshua, Paul, Timothy.
Yeah.
It's about that deliberate passing of the baton.
What exactly is being passed on?
It's more than just information. It's authority, practical skills, ministry philosophy, and maybe, most importantly, passion and character. It's deep, intentional investment.
Okay, so how do you spot the right people for this? The document gives us the threefold rubric for identifying and equipping emerging leaders.
Right. It suggests looking at 3 areas. First, character.
Yeah.
Things like integrity, teachability, humility, perseverance. Are they grounded?
Makes sense.
Second, competence. Do they show potential in leadership, teaching, organization, whatever skills are needed? Can they actually do the work?
Okay.
And third, chemistry. Is their vision alignment? Do they connect well relationally? Do they fit the cultural context? It's about the whole person and the fit.
Character, competence, chemistry. A good checklist. And then equipping for reproduction.
This involves creating those reproducible training tools we talked about, but it also highlights Paul's model of entrustment, entrusting the message and the ministry methods to faithful men and women who can then teach others also. It's about deep discipleship that leads to reproduction.
Passing it on effectively. The source also contrasts exponential, not linear growth.
Yeah, this is key. Linear growth is just adding one person or group at a time. Exponential growth happens when every person or group you equip becomes capable of equipping others.
1 becomes 2, 2 become 4.
Exactly. Like the early church or the Moravian revival they mention, that's the power of multiplication equipping reproducers, not just followers.
Now, things get very practical with the 90-day launch calendar, breaking down those crucial first 3 months.
Yeah, it's about hitting the ground running with intentionality. Month 1 is focused on vision casting and connection.
And includes things like an immersive vision trip. What's that involve?
Think of Moses scouting Canaan or Jesus on the road to Emmaus. It's about experiencing the context firsthand.
Getting out of the office.
Right. The principles are incarnational engagement, really being present in the community, contextual calibration, understanding the local realities, and spiritual synchronization, connecting through shared prayer and worship on site. It makes the vision real.
And personalized storytelling is also key in month 1.
Yes, moving beyond just facts to sharing stories that connect emotionally and illustrate the why.
Okay, month 2 of the 90 days. Commissioning and commitment.
This is where that public affirmation happens, the commissioning service. It's presented as a significant covenantal act, like in Acts 13 when Paul and Barnabas were sent out.
Formalizing the commitment.
Yes, and providing that spiritual covering. But it's not just ceremony. There's also partner onboarding.
What does that entail?
Making sure partners have what they need to succeed. Necessary resources, clear training pathways, ways to give and receive feedback. It's practical support systems.
Setting them up for success. Then month 3 is about early wins and momentum.
Celebrating those first fruits, recognizing initial progress, however small, builds morale and keeps things moving forward. Like Nehemiah serving the partially built wall, acknowledging progress fuels further effort.
And finally, within those 90 days, equipping partners to become co-mobilizers.
This is about quickly empowering your initial partners to start recruiting others, giving them the tools, maybe a mobilizer brief, letting them shadow experienced people, debriefing with them, and helping them craft compelling stories to share.
Turning partners into advocates.
Exactly. The source shares that case study, the Beacon Prayer Initiative, which spawned 3 networks.
Mountain Keep, Riverside Arise, Lakeside Circle.
Yeah, and it really shows these principles working. The partners took ownership, they were equipped effectively, each network had autonomy, but stayed connected relationally.
A great illustration.
Hmm.
Okay, shifting gears now to the really long view. The Legacy Partnership Plan, a 5-year roadmap,
Right, thinking 5 years out, but seeing it as a dynamic guide, not set in stone.
like a living document.
Exactly. It draws on the biblical blueprint for enduring impact, thinking generationally, like Solomon building the temple. It requires patience and perspective.
Like Abraham waiting for Isaac. Lasting impact takes time.
It sure does. God's timing, not always ours. That's why intentional rhythms of review are built in.
Like Nehemiah's inspections.
Kind of. Regular check-ins, maybe annual retreats to review the plan, assess progress, and make adjustments, keeping it relevant.
And shared ownership is vital here too, like the early church pooling resources.
Yeah, finding ways for partners to co-create the future, maybe through goal-setting workshops or having rotating leadership roles for different aspects, keeps everyone invested.
Makes sense. What about measurable milestones?
It's important to track progress, but not just numbers. Qualitative impact matters too. They suggest tools like a simple milestone dashboard or regular update memos.
Keeping track of both the what's and the how well. The plan also talks about an anchored communication strategy as covenant, not campaign. Explain that distinction.
A campaign is often short-term, maybe promotional. A covenant communication strategy is about consistent relational nurturing. It's about the frequency the channels used and content that shepherds hearts and strengthens the bonds over the long haul.
Relationship over transaction.
Precisely. Which leads to intentional partner care, showing genuine gratitude, celebrating partners, caring for them as people, not just resources, like Paul's warmth in his letters.
And succession thinking is crucial for legacy, isn't it?
Absolutely. Viewing it not just as filling a slot, but as intentionally developing future leaders to ensure the community and mission thrive beyond the current generation.
Right.
Like Moses praying for a successor in Numbers 27.
Thinking about who comes next. And finally, the power of mobilization. Healthy partnerships attract more partners. It concludes with moving from builders to architects of the future.
Yeah, that sums it up nicely. Shifting from just doing the work today to strategically designing structures and relationships that will sustain and multiply the impact for years, even generations to come.
So wrapping this all up, it seems the big picture is the synergy between launching well, sustaining intentionally, and multiplying effectively, all through the power of genuine partnership.
That's it. And seeing everything through that long-term legacy perspective.
It's about being, as the source says, master builders and co-weavers in God's bigger story.
A beautiful way to put it.
So the final thought for you listening is this. Considering everything we've discussed, what's maybe one concrete foundational step you could take, perhaps even today, to start cultivating a partnership that could extend your impact for generations?
That's a great question to ponder. How can you apply these principles right where you are?
Really chew on that. We hope this deep dive is giving you some valuable insights and practical ideas. Thanks for joining us.